بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. We were discussing the notion of let go of this nafs. And by nafs, we meant that dimension of the I, whereby the I is occupied with sinning, disobeying Allah, rebelling against Allah. That dimension which the Quran refers to as nafsul ammara bisu. And we have to get rid of it. Just let it loose or free ourselves from it. Right now, it's the ego which is governing one's nafs. It's one's animalistic dispositions which is governing oneself. And the way to do this is the love of Allah according to the Holy Quran. Because the Quran says you only have one heart, one source of attentiveness. You can't be attentive to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and other than Allah. And so if you're attentive to the dunya and you're predominated by the affinities of the dunya, there's going to be no Allah within. And we said the imperative in the Holy Quran is ittaqu Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ittaqullah. We have this capacity of embracing Allah, embracing the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this love of Allah, we have to try and nurture ourselves with it so that we can grow more and more and inshallah try and abide by this order of keeping Allah to the best of our capacity. Okay, the first step of loving Allah according to chapter 3 verse 31 was that fattabi'uni. The Holy Messenger is saying, follow me. Following the Holy Messenger has degrees. The first and most essential step is that of the Sharia. Because by abiding by the Sharia, you are going against your ego. You're going against the ammara bisu. And so, to act according to the Sharia to the dot is something very good. And naturally, the wajibat and the muharramat have priority. And once, if that's mastered, you can enter the mustahabbat and the makruhat. And then once these are mastered, keep on going into the smaller details. The more you commit yourselves to the Sharia, the more the ego will be suppressed. It's cause and effect. And this love of Allah at this stage, at the stage of the Sharia, if you succeed and master it, then you can go to higher levels. And we'll be discussing those inshallah in 2 days' time onwards. The point being that once it's mastered, this first stage, there are different signs which tell you. The most concrete sign whereby you know you've mastered this stage is that you haven't sinned intentionally for a number of months. That shows you've mastered this area. Sometimes in your dreams, the quality of your dreams may improve. I don't want to speak about that too much right now. But another is keeping the night vigil. And if possible, doing Salatul Layl. If you don't keep night vigil or don't do Salatul Layl, there's something wrong here. And that something wrong is you're sinning. You haven't mastered this first stage of the Sharia. And so you have to go back. What's wrong? Why can't I wake up at night when everyone's asleep and enjoy time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why don't I do Salatul Layl? The soul is contaminated, it's polluted. It's nafsul ammara. And one has to change here. This keeping night vigil, why is it so stressed upon? Why is it so emphasized? Why is it so important? And the scholars, many students of Allama Tabatabai have opened this up to some degree, that which is feasible for the common layperson like us. And they've tried to share some of the secrets of why this is important. Naturally, you have to merit and have the potential and capacity in order to keep night vigil to whatever extent and do Salatul Layl. That's something which is important. You have to execute the preliminaries. Otherwise, without the preliminaries, keeping night vigil will be, in quotes, premature. And it may even add to your nafs, your ego, and so on and so forth. But here, why is it so important? What part of the night is it? Well, in theory, it's from canonical midnight to the adhan of Fajr. Or, to be more precise, it's from canonical midnight to sunrise. But there's a certain part of the night which the scholars have extrapolated from the ahadith, where the ahadith speak about the final third of the night. So from canonical midnight to sunrise, the last third of it. And usually, it entails 1 to 2 hours before the Fajr adhan, and plus the time from Fajr to sunrise. So if Fajr to sunrise, this varies with the seasons. I'm just giving, an example. If from Fajr to sunrise is 1.5 hours, 1 to 2 hours before the Fajr adhan, let's say 1 hour, 1 plus 1.5, we're talking about 2.5 hours, 3 hours. Within these 3 hours, it's a very special period of time. Now, I'm not saying to be awake all of it, but to be awake for moments before Fajr adhan, and also be awake for moments from Fajr to sunrise. This is emphasized upon. Why? Here, they say there is a providential takwini effect if you're awake during this golden time. Takwini, cause and effect. You be awake, something will happen. It's cause and effect. Ayatollah Bahjat, rahmatullah alayh, spoke, and this has been shown on television, his students have said this, it's very well known, documented, it's a definite statement of Ayatollah Bahjat, rahmatullah alayh. He says that if you commit yourselves to salat at the first instance, here you will grow more and more towards Allah. Your iman will just keep on improving, getting stronger, augmenting. Even if this is the operative clause, even if there's no hudur qalb, no presence of the heart. So even if there's no presence of the heart, if you do Salatul Layl at the first instance, you'll get closer and closer to Allah, meaning the hudur qalb and everything else will follow from this, cause and effect. It's a very big statement. And apparently he got it from his mentor, Sayyid Ali Qadi. Naturally, questions arise as when is the first instance. The Maraji have given in their Risales the first instance of the 5 salats. The first instance of the 5 salats. So if you do Salatul Dhuhr, and then it's followed by Salatul As immediately, that may not be the first instance. Salatul As has a fadila time. Here our Sunni brothers are much ahead of us in this area. Even our Wahhabi brothers are much ahead of us. For some reason, the sociologists have to analyze why we Shias have lagged behind in this area. Anyway, in Iran, see, the thing is, we have to know when the time is. It has to be substantiated for us. Salatul Fajr, even maybe in Iran, you have to investigate. The time that they give the adhan for Salatul Fajr, it's a bit ambiguous. And when you investigate it, they may give the Tehran University Astronomical Center, whatever. Whether it's Fajr Kadhib or Sadiq, praying at the first instance for Salatul Fajr, I wouldn't do it exactly at the time of Adhan. But everyone has to investigate for themselves. Maybe if you leave 15 to 20 minutes and then do it, it's still Salat, it still qualifies as the Fadila time. And there's no problem there. But doing it immediately may not be on a par with precaution, at least. Then there's a question of when is the fadila time, the grace period, so to speak, of Maghrib, for example. And the Marajis have given it, and that's everyone to their own manager. There may be differences of opinion. Ayatollah Bahjat himself regarded sunset as the start and first instance, whereas the majority say Maghrib. And there's a difference of at least 10 minutes in between. And those 10 minutes, Sayyid Ali Qadi has attached a lot of importance. I'm saying these things happen. But anyway, all I can say on the pulpit is everyone has to follow their manager. But with the timings that your manager says, investigate the issue. That's all I'm saying. Investigate it so it's substantiated. What is the first instance? One of the students of Allama Tabatabai has said that this statement of Sayyid Ali Qadi, that if you pray the salat at the first instance without even hudur qalb, it will get you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says that the operative part of this prescription is this. Now, I've never seen Allama Tabatabai in his writing say this, so I can't swear by it. And this student of Allama Tabatabai, I wouldn't say he is amongst the top class students of Allama Tabatabai. But this student has many students, and you know their students, they're very well known, alhamdulillah, here in Qom. They say the main prescription part of this statement of Sayyid Ali Qadi is, because if you want to do Salatul Layl at the Salatul Fajr at the first instance, it means you have to be awake for some moments at least to do your wudu and so on and so forth in the pre-Fajr time. And then when the adhan happens, then in the post-Fajr time, you are awake too. And this being awake in this golden period, both in the pre-Fajr and post-Fajr, that is the key behind this prescription Sayyid Ali Qadi has given. There's some weight in it. It may be possible. I can't swear by it. All I can say is it's important to do Salatul Fajr at the first instance. Make an effort. And by doing so, you'll be awake, albeit for a few moments before Fajr Adhan. And then for Salat, naturally that will be after the Fajr Adhan. And also, once a sister who was suffering from depression had gone to Ayatollah Bahjat for some help, and he said, experience moments of the pre-Fajr time. And go out and walk around a bit, breathe the air, and just be awake for the pre-Fajr, that golden time in the pre-Fajr. Now, that sister had the capacity within her for Ayatollah Bahjat to give this prescription. If the capacity wasn't there within her, maybe he wouldn't have given this prescription because it would have been void. She had the necessary preliminaries to be given this prescription. I'm not a mentor, me personally. Getting prescriptions from me is an academic thing. It won't be of any use for you. We have to try to find the true mentors, and they are becoming less and less. But Ayatollah Bahjat, rahmatullah alayhi, said, having a mentor is a formality. It's not a prerequisite. He said, if you act upon that which you know, Allah, knowledge per se, will pour down upon you. That's also a providential takwini equation. It's very delicate. So you just act upon that which you know, don't compromise, fully act upon that which you know. The effect will be you receiving divine guidance. You make one stride towards Allah. The Hadith al-Qudsi says Allah makes 10 strides towards you. And here now Allah coming towards you may take many different forms. You may be introduced to someone, giving you knowledge. It may be through a dream. There may be, the walls may speak with you. It's possible. Allah may reveal things upon you. It's possible. Allah may bring a teacher along your way, and so on and so forth. But still, the question remains, why is this period, the golden period, so golden? Why is it so emphasized in the ahadith? And the answer the scholars have given is because you're configuring yourself with the 12th Imam's du'as. You want to be in alignment when the 12th Imam is executing his du'as. Now, naturally the 12th Imam is doing du'as continuously, but during this time, there's a special relevance here. And you being awake you want to benefit from the du'as of the 12th Imam. Now someone may say, well, what about the time difference? We don't know when the hour zone may be different to the... We have that sometimes in relation to the Laylatul Qadr, for example, depending on the moon sightings. Is Laylatul Qadr today or is it tomorrow? What are we going to do? That country, it's tomorrow. This country is today. It's two different time zones. When is Laylatul Qadr? This kind of talk, it's very lowly. It's very futile. You're just wasting your time. And the reason people speak like this is because they're predominated by the dunya. The ghaib, the metaphysical unseen realms, is not part of their Islamic lifestyle. Only the dunya is part of their lifestyle. At best, it's a few do's and don'ts without attentiveness to akhirah, and they come up with this kind of talk. Whereas Laylatul Qadr, the reality of Laylatul Qadr is a metaphysical reality. A metaphysical reality is not bound by time and space. And when that metaphysical reality manifests, it manifests in the physical realm at different times. That's okay. It's only natural. Each to their own share. But that metaphysical reality has no time or space. Now, it may manifest in one country at one time, in another country and spaced territory at another. That's okay. Why do you want everything to be together? We don't have, yes. So, the same here. The du'as of the 12th Imam, it's a metaphysical reality which is governing the universe. The 12th Imam is governing the universe. It's not his physical hands or physical feet. The 12th Imam has metaphysical layers of existence. The fact that you confine everything to the dunya without any attentiveness to the ghaib, that's your problem. And so that metaphysical reality during the golden period of the 12th Imam, that metaphysical reality of his du'as will manifest from territory to territory in their own time and space. But the point is, you have to configure yourself, shape yourself, be in alignment with the du'as of the 12th Imam. And that's why this period is so important. As I say, you have to have the preliminaries to benefit from it. Otherwise, you'd be exerting a lot of unnecessary pressure upon yourself. And if you want to start from tonight, at least do a few minutes. Don't overload yourself. Don't burn yourself. And here, the Urafa have, in relation to one very important hadith. This hadith has been mentioned in Lubbul Lubab, the kernel of kernels. Those are Allama Tabataba'i's lectures in spiritual wayfaring during a period of time of his life. And Lubbul Lubab are students, one of his students' notes. So he would, during the lessons write, and then, alhamdulillah, he has afforded us this opportunity to benefit. Now, I'm not saying it's 100% Allama Tabataba'i's. There may be errors in it. It's possible. Many of Allama's students have said this. But anyway, it's a good book and it's very useful. Lubbul Lubab. This hadith is given in Lubbul Lubab. And the students of Allama Tabatabai have given this interpretation, but this interpretation isn't explicitly mentioned in the book. It's only alluded to. It's only, isharat and yes. The hadith is a prophetic hadith saying, Inna li rabbikum fi ayyam dahrikum nafahat. That during your lifetime, during the days of your life, for your Lord there are breezes. As I say, I'll give examples of this later in the verse of the Holy Quran. Some people, all they do with the ahadith and the verse of the Quran is give a physical interpretation. I've even seen it with this hadith. I'm not saying it's bad, but they suffice with it. The verses of the Holy Quran are multidimensional. They have a dhahir and they have infinite layers of batin, of inner dimensions. It's a mockery of religion if you suffice with the dhahir. So, with your Lord, during the days of your life, your lifetime, there are breezes. فَتَعَرَّضُوا لَهَا. Turn towards them. Here, they say that the period of your lifetime, the days of your lifetime, this lifetime of yours is in that golden period of night, before Fajr and after Fajr, as we said, 2 to 3 hours. And here, the breezes have been mentioned as be referring to the Imam of the times du'as. فَتَعَرَّضُوا. Prepare yourself. Make yourself susceptible to. Place yourself within these breezes, the du'as of the 12th Imam. And so, be awake. Make yourself susceptible to be a recipient of these breezes. فَتَعَرَّضُوا. Turn towards them. And here, if you have the proper preliminaries and you're awake and you have a particular dua, the dua will be accepted. I've heard this from many very high scholars. They say there's no going back. How can a dua by someone who is ready, who has that capacity, the preliminaries are done, how can a dua that they make, which is in alignment with the du'as of the 12th Imam, how can that not be accepted? And they give examples. That if some people, or for example, they have difficulties in fertility and they want a child, and they do what they have to do, at least in the medical area, but it doesn't work. And then after many years of trying, 5, 7, even in one case, 18 years of trying, they became pregnant and they had child. And they may attribute it to the medical things and what they went through. And one never knows. They may have been awake in this golden period and the click was made without them even being attentive to all this. Yes, sometimes something is not destined for you. That doesn't apply. But if it is, and your du'as are in alignment with the 12th Imams, how can it be rejected? During this period of time, in London, when I used to live in London, there was a student of a very important scholar in Hamadan by the name of Mullah Ali Ma'sumi Hamadani. He was a very good faqih, a marja, but he had some credibility and merit in Irfan too, because he had very good ustads. And a student of him in London said that during this golden period, Joshan Kabir, reading lines and clauses of Joshan Kabir, not necessarily all of it. There's no need to tire yourself. But occupying yourself with Joshan Kabir is a good thing. That's, for a few minutes at least. According to the logic of the Quran, the pre-Fajr period, the adhkar, which is rotated upon istighfar, has priority. In the pre-Fajr period, saying astaghfirullah, for example, or other istighfar related clauses, like La ilaha illa an subhanaka inni kuntu min adh-dhalimin, and so on. They have some priority. That's not to say there's no need to commit yourself to those adhkar after Fajr. But at least the logic of the Quran, as we see, is that the suhoor period is for istighfar. 22 years ago, it was very easy to see the Marajih. And when I first came to Qom, I visited all of them, even those that maybe many of you have never heard, the likes of Khaqani or Jubari. But Ayatollah Wahid Khorasani was very accessible. I had many sessions with him, private, one-to-one. He wasn't my mentor, don't get me wrong. But it was very easy. Even at nights, his son would allow me to go there. After 1 year, they stopped. Maybe I was overdoing it. But one of his prescriptions, which is very well known, and he gave this when I was with him, and this is also in relation to this being in alignment with the 12th Imam, he said, after Salatul Fajr, Surah Yasin and Du'a Ahd. Surah Yasin is 5 or 6 pages. It's not too much. One can finish it in, 10 minutes or so. Du'a Ahd, it's a very short dua. We're only talking about 25 minutes here. Naturally, if you do it with the presence of the heart, it's better. But you see, these two, because Surah Yasin, there's a relationship between Surah Yasin and the Imam of the time. Because it's the heart of the Quran. And there's a unity between the Quran and the Imam. And so it's the heart of the Imam too. See, it's to do with the 12th Imam. Well, the Imam of the time. With us now, it's the 12th Imam. And there are many other prescriptions, but these are just some of the things which I myself have heard from the scholars. If you experience this being keeping night vigil and you see it's not working, there's definitely something wrong. Yes, you're not, you have to go back. You have to do an MOT, like a test. You test one yourself. Go to a local sheikh. Try to get some advice from him. Why aren't things working? Can you advise me? Is there something I can do? So this is the first step. And once this step is mastered, then you can go to succeeding steps. Inshallah, in 2 days' time, if Allah wills, we'll give more. I'll speak more about the different steps and what the Quranic protocol is. Ayatollah Hassanzadeh, in one of his books, there's 3 pages in one of his books in relation to the levels of purification. We'll go into that, inshallah. But if you succeed this first stage, at least wayfaring has started. Traveling to Allah has started, or if it hasn't, at least you've put your trainers on, ready for the journey. Now, here, when one is journeying, the traveler to Allah, naturally the aim is ittaqullah. There are 2 phenomena which arises for the traveler. And these two are both essential, but they have to be looked in a particular manner, but they're both essential. One is called qabd and one is bast. Qabd, these are stations of the heart. These two terms even apply with the physical heart, but they also apply with the metaphysical heart. With the physical heart, in relation to the blood vessels of the heart, you must have done it in biology, you've heard about vasoconstriction, when the vessels constrict, and then where the vessels dilate. Or even with the different heart chambers, you have a constriction of the ventricles, for example, and a dilation of the ventricles of the heart. So this constriction and dilation, qabd being constriction, bast being dilation. With the physical heart we have it. But when it comes to our soul, the metaphysical heart, these states also apply. And then it's not all bad. It's good, bad, depends, as I said. Sometimes the heart, you feel the soul is suffering from a spiritual lethargy. The soul is constricted, the heart is constricted. There's a certain tightness and restriction of the heart. Whereas with bast, the spiritual heart is expanding. There's a verve, a joy, an ampleness of the heart. These are two important states. They're both necessary. If there was no constriction, there wouldn't be any dilation. The heart has to constrict for the blood then to spread around the body. So qabd is important. If it was only bast and no constriction, no qabd, the salik can't grow. They can't grow anymore. And we want to abide by ittaqullah, embrace Allah, the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And without qabd, it wouldn't be possible. If we only had qabd, that tightness and restriction of the heart, that can be dangerous at times. It can destroy one spiritually and sometimes irreversibly. But these are two states that the salik is going to be involved with inevitably. And we have ahadith, and this notion of qabd and bast is related, they extrapolate it from the text. Inna hadhihi al-qulub aw'iyah, that the hearts are like containers. فَخَيْرُهَا, the best of them is aw'aha, are the most spacious. And the more spacious the heart is, the more attributes of Allah you can fit in oneself and see and then ultimately be. Now, this idea of I'll just end with this and we'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. Although this is a marginal point, but just to give some idea of what we mean, Allah has many attributes of perfection. We want to manifest them. And so in Sayru Suluk, they say to be ready to manifest these, there are certain protocols. It's different if a kafir is patient to when a monotheist salik is patient. That kafir who is patient, it's because of their genetics, their hormones, different things. There's no Allah in that equation. That patience is a very limited value, very limited. At best, it's humanitarian. humanitarian also, it's a very limited aspect. Islam is something else. It's much higher than humanity or being humanitarian. But it's important that all of Allah's attributes we manifest. It's an important thing. And when we manifest it, the backbone is Tawheed. Now, I've spoken about a lot about this. I'm not going to mention this right now because I have many lectures. I don't want to repeat too much. Some attributes, and this is the reason I want to mention just this marginal point, some attributes we have to be very careful. One of those is justice. One of Allah's attributes is Al-Adl. Sometimes you may have encountered it with yourself at least, that you forgive very easily. And then the ego is praising you for forgiving someone at ease. Whereas this, in reality, is destroying you. Justice has to be implemented. Justice has to be manifested. If your neighbor has committed or is committing an injustice, for example, they've built their building many meters in front of yours and it's illegal, for example. It's a form of ghasb, it's usurping your light, and other things. And then you say, "Oh, I forgive you, it's okay." And that's not a very safe way to establish your lifestyle, because you haven't established justice here yet. This kind of forgiving has no worth. You may think it is, but this kind of forgiving is acting as an impediment to you embracing Allah, in this example, the justice attribute of Allah. You have to get your justice, your right. And that means acting, running, working, getting your right. And then when you're on the brink of succeeding to getting your right, and they're going to now, that extra advancement which your neighbor made, they're going to now destroy it, or you just break it down, a bulldozer is going to, then you forgive. Look, then you forgive. You don't forgive from day one. You're just fooling yourself. You're embracing no one but shaitan. You forgive when the justice aspect hasn't been compromised. And you went, and now you're on top. The court says the right is yours. You've manifested justice. Now, you want to forgive? Now forgive. Not when you had you couldn't do anything, and he was just doing what he was doing, and then you just say, I forgive. That kind of irfan is rubbish. And one of the ways you can ascertain between true irfan and is the likes of Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayh. Justice was never compromised, but he was very forgiving. And his model is the Holy Messenger. Prisoners of war had to be killed. Certain prisoners, because of their actions, the Holy Messenger forgave certain. Not that they just to forgive willy-nilly. These things are important. Okay, inshallah we'll continue with qabd and bast tomorrow. Tonight, inshallah, the words of bereavement pertain to Hazrat Hurr. And this is one of those it's very difficult to unlock the secrets behind the story of Hurr. At the end of the day, Hurr was in the wrong on the outside. And the change made to the camp of Haqq is something which is very applicable to me and you today. Especially, for example, those in the West even. Did Hurr have, what did Hurr have rather? Naturally, he had the capacity to make that change. The potential was there. The grounds were there. But what was it in Hurr which allowed and enabled him to make that change? And that this is something very important. And when you look at the history of Hurr and his background, very little is given in the books of history. But Imam Hussein mentioned a statement. In that statement, it can be extrapolated. Whether this is the be-all and end-all and the only reason, I don't know. But he made a statement. The words of the Imam are Allah's words. They shouldn't be looked at just any Tom, Dick and Harry giving a statement. There are secrets in those statements. And here it alludes to the secret behind, maybe alludes to the secret behind the success of Hurr. And actually, although I wanted to mention it tonight, but I didn't get the time, I'll speak about this in more detail tomorrow. But I'll mention what the secret is, inshallah, right now. So many questions remain in relation to Hurr. Something which many maqtals mention is that because Hurr was a commander of Ibn Ziyad, so he was working for the Taghut, and he had a very high, prestigious position in the army of the Taghut, and he was the commander of Ibn Ziyad, and maybe he was only second to Umar ibn Sa'd, who's the most maybe important commander amongst the commanders of Ibn Ziyad. So he was ranking on the top. When Ibn Ziyad gave him the order to collect 1,000 of your men and go towards Imam Hussein and stop him in his advancement towards Kufa, when the order was given and he exited the room or palace or whatever, after making a few strides, he heard a voice. Anta ala khair, you are upon virtue, according to some maqtals, or Ya Hurr, abshir bil jannah, O Hurr, glad tidings of heaven for you. Allahu Akbar. Look. Now, he's now been given an order by Ibn Ziyad to stop the Waliullah of the time from advancing and the things which were going to develop from then. Hurr, it was only natural that Hurr said to himself, this is a satanic thing. Whereas this voice, it wasn't a physical voice. It's what they say in Arabic, a hatif. It's a hatif. Hatif is when you hear the voice, but you don't see anything. And that's why all the telephones we used to have before mobiles and everything, in Arabic they would call the telephone hatif, because you can hear the person in the phone, but you can't see them, for example. But this was a metaphysical vision that he had. And this itself shows that Hurr wasn't a, ordinary person. If I want to make an analogy, during the time of the Shah in Iran, there were many deputies of the Shah who ended as very decent people. They were very decent and they aided the revolution to some degree. But they were under the auspices and the command of the Shah at the same time, which isn't a good thing. So Hurr thought this is satanic. He's saying, now I've been given the order to, stop Ahlul Bayt from advancing. Now this is khair, this is heaven. He thought this is a satanic prescription. It's possible. It was possible at least. But he had this. It's mentioned in different maqtals. One of the maqtals which I was looking was, and it's a very good maqtal. The problem is it's written in very ancient, not ancient, very old Farsi. It's called Qamqam Zakhar. It was written in the Qajari time in Iran. But it was written, it's as if someone's PhD was the maqtals and he wrote it in old Farsi. And it's interesting, the author mentions that all the maqtals or books coming after the year 1000 in the solar calendar, which is around 400 years ago, I didn't mention anything from those. Only those before. As I say, history is a science, it has its own principles. But it's a good book, but even for me it's very difficult to understand the Farsi at times. Qamqam Zakhar, it's called. Anyway, this is mentioned there and in other maqtals. So Hurr got the order from Ibn Ziyad, and he led the 1st battalion and went to encounter Imam Hussein. So it was Hurr who prevented Imam Hussein's family and the companions to progress further and made them stop where they are. And when Imam Hussein said, "You yourselves invited me to Kufa," Hurr said, "No, I had nothing to do with it." So he wasn't one of the covenant breakers, so to speak. And Hurr said, "At least here, you can stop here. It's near the Euphrates, there's water. At least you have some access. It's easy, but you can't progress." So Imam asked, what's the name of this area? They said Taf, they said other names until Karbala was given, and he said, "Yes, this is destined. We're here to stay." They executed the Zuhr prayer. Hurr prayed. And when the Imam said, "You can pray for yourselves, we'll lead our own congregation," Hurr said no. You see, what's important to realize is that with Hurr, he never thought the battle will become actualized. Look, he thought maybe like the peace treaty with Imam Hassan, something will be sorted out. He would never think that the ruling authorities, would actually go with this and cause this war. So this has to be borne in mind, that as Hurr is doing what he's doing, he's of the belief that it will all be sorted. Otherwise, when the Imam wanted to pray, Hurr said, "No, we have to pray too, and we're going to pray behind you." That prayer is going to affect Hurr. It's the prayer of Imam Hussein. If Hurr has the proper capacity within, it's going to affect him. That's what congregational prayers do. That's why the congregational Imam is important. Because that congregational Imam will affect you, will affect your journeying towards Allah. And if the congregational Imam, God forbid, is polluted, it's going to affect you negatively. I remember in the memoirs of the late Ayatollah Bahauddini, rahmatullah alayh, he said, "I wouldn't pray behind anyone. I would do furada, only when I find that right person." But I don't want to take anything from the importance of congregational prayer, but this aspect of it too has to be borne in mind. Hurr prayed. They did the Zuhr prayer. There was a lapse time period, and then it was time for Asr prayer. Hurr also brought his people to pray behind Imam Hussein when the time of Asr came. Those few days before the 10th of Ashra, they were benefiting from Imam Hussein. Not only by looking at his behavior, they would pray behind him. Look, this is important. It has an effect. But he would never think that this battle will become actualized. After a few days, Umar ibn Sa'd arrived, followed by Shem. And things were becoming a bit ugly. And Hurr said to Umar ibn Sa'd, "You're not really going to go through this, are you? This is recorded in the Maqtals. You're not really going to go through this." Umar ibn Sa'd said, "No." He said, "Yes, of course we are. And it's going to be very easy." And he's added words which are very difficult to say. And then Hurr started trembling. It's as if he really believed, no, they're going to go ahead with it. And people would see him trembling. He would tell those who were accompanying him that you go and water your horses. Someone was very suspicious when he said that. He said, when he said that, this companion of Hurr, he said, when I heard him say that, it was inspired upon me that he's going to go to the enemy, to the other camp. You know, people were amazed why Hurr is acting in such a manner. And then someone asked him, "Why are you trembling?" Hurr said, "Inni ukhayyiru nafsi bayna al-jannati wan-nar, fawallahi la akhtaru ala al-jannah shay'a, walau qutti'at wa uhriqt." That, look, it's as if I have the option. I'm seeing I have the option between heaven and hell. By Allah, I swear that I'm not going to choose over heaven anything. Even if it means my body is cut up and amputated and burned, I'm not going to accept anything. And so he ultimately, when he saw the two camps, it was very easy now to ascertain which is the heavenly camp. And he fled with his horse to the other camp. The Maqtals explained that when he was approaching the other camp of Imam Hussein, it says, وَاضَعًا يَدَهُ عَلَى رَأْسِهِ. He was holding his hand on his head, which is an expression of regret, remorse. Because at the end of the day, the children of Ahlul Bayt saw him. They knew it was him who blocked everyone from progressing towards Kufa. He had his hand on his head and he was exclaiming, Allahumma ilayka unib fatub alayya. Oh Allah, I'm returning to you. Accept this repentance of mine. Why? فَقَدْ أَرْعَبْتُ قُلُوبَ أَوْلِيَائِكَ وَأَوْلَادِ نَبِيِّكَ. Because I caused a trembling within the hearts of your lovers and the children of your messenger. He then said, on arriving at the camp, directing himself towards Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Ya Abu Abdullah, فَهَلْ لِي مِن تَوْبَةٍ. Is there any way of tawbah for me, repentance? And the Imam said, Na'am, Yatubullah alayk. Allah is forgiving you. The doors of repentance are always open. Hurr then said, give me permission to go and speak with the enemy camp. Maybe I can speak some sense into them. He went, he spoke, it was of no use. And as he was returning, the enemy started firing the arrows. Hurr, with his horse, started combating. And many soldiers came in combat, and he was successful to start off with until one of the soldiers slit the tendons of the feet of the horse, the legs of the horse, and the horse fell. Then Hurr, with his sword alone, was on foot, entered into battle with many soldiers until finally being struck down. When he was struck down, they came and brought his body towards the tents of the other martyrs. And the Imam then, after he was brought to the tents, the Imam approached him. Although Hurr was buried elsewhere, he wasn't buried in Karbala. The zahir of this story is because of the chivalry and courage and valor that he had. He was such a huge figure. His head also was never amputated. The enemy wouldn't amputate his head. 6 heads were amputated during battle. The rest of the 72 or so, the heads were amputated afterwards. But during battle itself, only 6 heads. But Hurr wasn't amongst the 72. He was the only one amongst the 72. Otherwise, there were many others too who died in this battle. But amongst the companions and everyone, his body wasn't amputated, the head wasn't amputated, and it was taken away. It was buried elsewhere. That's the head of the story. The batin of the story is something else. He couldn't be buried with Imam Hussein. At the end of the day, with the background that he had, he was of a lower degree to many of the 72, the shuhada of Karbala. Hurr wasn't of the same degree. The degree is high, that of Hazrat Abbas, Ali Akbar and the others. It's a very high degree, even Habib and others. And it would have been a burden for him, a spiritual burden, if he was buried there at that time. Although I don't want to speak about that here too much. But temporarily, at least, they brought the body back at the tents of Imam Hussein. And then Imam Hussein approached him. Kana bihi ramaq. Hurr still had some life within him. فقال له, Imam said to him, وهو يمسح الدماء, whilst wiping the blood from Hurr's face, for example. The Imam said, Antal Hurr, you are Hurr, free. Now this is the clause. Kama samatka ummuk, as your mother named you. The mother named him Hurr. Imam is saying, you are Hurr as your mother named you. And then he ended, وَأَنْتَ الْحُرْ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ, you'll be free in the dunya and in the hereafter. But the point was, Hurr's relationship with his mother was the key to the success of Hurr. And we'll continue with this, inshallah, tomorrow. وَصَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَآلِهِ الطَّاهِرِينَ.